Something just happened that will destroy Western markets. Not might destroy, will destroy. $8 trillion. That's more than the entire economy of Germany, more than Japan, more than every country in Africa combined. And China just moved it, quietly, systematically, in a coordinated strategy that only makes sense if they're preparing for total economic war. The West thinks this is normal financial maneuvering, just China being China, just another headline that doesn't matter. They're catastrophically wrong, because this exact move has happened 3 times in recorded history. Same pattern, same sequence, same devastating outcome, every single time, without exception, without mercy. And we're not at the beginning anymore, we're deep into stage 3, the point where collision becomes mathematically inevitable. Let me show you the pattern, the one they don't teach in economics classes, the one that's been erased from history books because it's too dangerous. 4 stages, always the same sequence, always the same ending. Stage 1 is dual dependency. 2, economic powers become intertwined. Trade flows become massive. Each side believes they need the other. Economists write papers about how interconnected the world has become, how war is impossible because of economic ties. Money flows freely. Both sides get rich. Politicians give speeches about partnership and cooperation. Everyone thinks it's permanent. It never is. Stage 2 is asymmetric accumulation. One side starts building strategic advantages, while the other grows complacent. Surplus nations build massive reserves. Deficit nations build massive debt. Power shifts quietly, almost invisibly. The rising power is saving, building, preparing. The dominant power is spending, borrowing, assuming, until suddenly it's obvious. Until suddenly the power has already shifted. Until suddenly it's too late to reverse. Stage 3 is strategic repositioning. The rising power realizes they've accumulated enough leverage. They start restructuring, diversifying, building alternatives, preparing for separation. They do this quietly, without announcements, without press conferences, without warning, while maintaining the appearance of cooperation, while smiling at diplomatic meetings, while signing trade agreements. Behind the scenes, they're preparing for war, not military war, something worse, economic war. This is where we are right now, and most people don't even know it. Stage 4 is controlled demolition. The rising power triggers collapse deliberately, not accidentally, deliberately. They weaponize the dependency they spent decades building. They use economic force to achieve political objectives. They destroy without firing a single shot. The established empire can't respond. They're trapped by their own debt, their own consumers, their own system, their own arrogance. They collapse, not militarily, economically, which is worse, much worse, because you can't fight back. You can only watch. You can only suffer. This pattern is played out 3 times in modern history. Same sequence, same stages, same outcome. The pattern is played out 3 times in modern history. England and Germany, 1900, 1914. Britain controlled a quarter of the planet. The pound was the world's reserve currency. Germany was rising fast, industrializing rapidly. Both countries traded heavily. Massive commercial ties. The relationship seemed permanent. British newspapers wrote about eternal peace through commerce. They were catastrophically wrong. Germany quietly restructured their foreign reserves between 1900 and 1910, reduced British pound holdings by 60%, accumulated gold instead, built the largest gold reserve in continental Europe, created alternative trade relationships with Russia, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire. By 1912, German bankers were discussing financial warfare in private meetings, how to weaponize gold flows, how to collapse sterling without firing a shot. They were planning economic war 2 years before military war started. August 1914, World War I begins. Germany froze British assets in German banks, recalled gold from London, triggered massive liquidity crisis. The Bank of England nearly collapsed in the first week. Not from bombs. From the weapon Germany had been building, Britain had to suspend gold convertibility, beg the United States for emergency loans, abandon the very system that made them a superpower. The pound never recovered. Within 30 years, the dollar replaced it. America and Japan, 1950-1990. Post-war, America rebuilt Japan as a trading partner. Both sides prospered enormously. But starting in 1960, Japan began accumulating dollars. By 1985, Japan held over $300 billion in U.S. reserves, enormous leverage. Japanese companies bought American real estate, Rockefeller Center, Columbia Pictures. Americans thought it was investment. It was positioning. In 1985, the Plaza Accord. Japan forced America to devalue the dollar, used their leverage to reshape global currency markets. This was a demonstration of power. October 1987, Black Monday. The Dow dropped 22.6% in one day. Over $1 trillion evaporated. Was it random panic? No. Coordinated selling from Japanese institutions, massive liquidation of American assets. Japan had the power to destroy American markets whenever they chose. They proved economic warfare is more effective than military warfare. Europe and Russia, 2000-2022. Europe rebuilt relationships with Russia, massive energy deals. Germany became 65% dependent on Russian gas. Italy 50%. Poland 40%. The relationship seemed permanent. Russia was building leverage, accumulated $600 billion in reserves. Reduced dollar exposure, built alternatives to SWIFT. Nobody paid attention. Western analysts dismissed it. February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. The West responds with massive sanctions. They think the Russian economy will collapse. Something shocking happened. Russia didn't collapse. The ruble recovered. They'd prepared, built alternatives, positioned perfectly. Then Russia triggered stage 4, turned energy into a weapon, cut gas flows, triggered energy crisis, drove European inflation to double digits, destroyed industrial production. German factories shut down, all through economic warfare, all through weaponizing dependency. The pattern works every time, without fail, without exception. 3 historical examples, 3 different time periods, 3 different powers, different continents, different contexts, identical pattern, identical sequence, identical outcome. Now China is running the same playbook, but bigger, more sophisticated, more devastating, more complete. Stage 1 was completed between 1990 and 2010, 20 years of foundation building. America opened trade with China after decades of isolation, brought them into the global system, made them the world's factory. Outsourced manufacturing, transferred technology, built supply chains. Trade exploded from billions to trillions annually. American companies moved entire industries to China, textiles, electronics, pharmaceuticals, everything. China accumulated dollars, massive amounts, became America's factory and America's banker simultaneously. Everyone got rich. Corporate profits soared. Chinese wages rose. Consumers got cheap goods. Politicians from both countries celebrated the partnership. The relationship seemed permanent, mutually beneficial, unbreakable. The foundation of a new global order, deep interdependence established. Stage 1 complete. Stage 2 started in 2010 and accelerated through 2020. 10 years of accumulation, building leverage, creating advantages. China didn't just accumulate dollars. They accumulated $3 trillion in foreign reserves. They became America's largest foreign creditor, larger than Japan, larger than all of Europe combined. But they did something else, something more strategic, something more dangerous. They built a parallel system, an alternative structure, a replacement for the entire Western economic order, the Belt and Road Initiative, announced in 2013. Over 150 countries participating now, $1 trillion invested, creating trade routes that bypass Western systems entirely, roads, ports, railroads, pipelines, all connecting Asia to Europe to Africa, all using Chinese financing, Chinese construction, Chinese standards, Chinese currency. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, created in 2016, competing directly with the World Bank and IMF, offering alternatives to dollar-based financing. Over 100 member countries, the digital yuan launched in 2020, a central bank digital currency that can bypass SWIFT, bypass Western sanctions, bypass the entire dollar system, create an entirely separate financial structure. China wasn't just trading with America, they were building the replacement, the alternative, the weapon. They were preparing for separation while everyone else thought it was cooperation. Asymmetric accumulation complete. Stage 2 verified. Stage 3 is happening right now, 2022 to present. And this is where it gets absolutely terrifying. In the last 24 months, China has restructured $8 trillion of their economic position. $8 trillion moved, repositioned, restructured. Let me break down exactly what that means. What's actually happening beneath the surface? What the mainstream media isn't telling you. They've reduced U.S. Treasury holdings from over $1 trillion to under $800 billion. That's a $200 billion reduction in just 2 years. They're actively selling American debt, systematically, quietly. Without causing panic, they've increased gold reserves by 70%, officially. Official numbers say they hold 2,000 tons, but unofficial estimates from commodity traders say 5,000 tons, maybe more. They're buying every ounce of gold they can find, paying premiums, avoiding public markets, accumulating secretly. Why? Because they're preparing for a gold-backed currency system, a direct challenge to the dollar's fiat dominance. They've signed currency swap agreements with over 30 countries, bilateral agreements allowing direct trade in yuan instead of dollars. Russia. Massive swap. They now trade entirely in yuan and rubles, no dollars. Saudi Arabia. They're buying oil in yuan now, not dollars. Brazil. Direct currency swap for trade. Argentina, UAE, Pakistan, Thailand. All bypassing the dollar, all creating alternatives, all preparing for separation. They've created CEPS, the cross-border interbank payment system, a direct alternative to SWIFT, processing billions of dollars daily, growing exponentially. In 2022, CIPS processed 100 trillion yuan. In 2023, 150 trillion. That's a 50% increase in 1 year. This isn't a test system. This isn't experimental. This is a functioning alternative that's ready to replace SWIFT when stage 4 triggers. They've been stockpiling critical resources at unprecedented levels. Oil reserves at all-time highs, 200 days of supply, strategic metals, copper, lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements, food supplies, grain reserves at record levels. They're preparing for disruption, for sanctions, for separation, for economic war. This isn't random accumulation. This is surgical preparation. Every resource China is hoarding represents a potential weapon, a pressure point they can squeeze when stage 4 triggers: oil for energy security during Western sanctions, rare earths to control technology supply chains, food to weather any agricultural warfare. But here's the most important move, the one that reveals the timeline, the one that tells you exactly when this is happening. November 2023, China ordered all state-owned enterprises to divest from Western markets within 3 years. Read that again. All state-owned enterprises. Complete divestment. 3-year deadline. That's not a recommendation. That's not guidance. That's an order. Mandatory. Enforced by the Chinese Communist Party. This directive isn't just about portfolio management. It's about eliminating exposure before the controlled demolition. You don't tell your state enterprises to sell Western assets unless you plan to attack Western markets. You don't liquidate 8 trillion unless you expect those markets to collapse. 8 trillion of Chinese institutional money currently sits in Western stocks, bonds, real estate, private equity. All of it must be liquidated by November 2026. 8 trillion. Moving out. Selling, liquidating, repositioning. That's not risk management. That's not portfolio diversification. That's preparation for total separation, for conflict, for economic war. But it's also the fuse. 8 trillion in forced selling creates downward pressure on Western markets even before stage 4 triggers. It weakens the foundation, makes the collapse more devastating when the real attack begins. Think about the mechanics. Chinese sovereign wealth funds, state pension funds, government investment vehicles, all of them dumping Western assets simultaneously. Not because of market conditions, because of political orders. The selling won't be gradual, it will be methodical, but relentless. Every quarter, more Chinese institutional money flows out of Western markets. Every quarter, the foundation gets weaker. The system becomes more fragile. By late 2026, Western markets will be structurally vulnerable, dependent on remaining foreign capital, over-leveraged, overvalued, ripe for collapse. Strategic repositioning verified. Stage 3 confirmed. We are deep in stage 3 right now, the quiet phase before the storm, the preparation phase before the attack, the positioning phase before the demolition. And stage 4 is coming. Not might come, will come. The only question is timing, and we know the timeline now. 2026. That's when the divestment completes. That's when China's positioning is final. That's when they're ready. The mathematics are terrifying. 8 trillion in divestment pressure, 800 billion in remaining treasuries ready to dump, 3 trillion in accumulated reserves, 5,000 tons of gold, alternative payment systems processing trillions, stockpiled resources for years of economic war. China has assembled the most sophisticated economic weapon in history, more powerful than anything Germany, Japan, or Russia ever possessed, more comprehensive, more devastating, more final. Here's what stage 4 looks like when China triggers it. Pay attention because this is specific. This is detailed. This is exactly how it unfolds. China will do 3 things simultaneously: coordinated, planned, devastating. First, they'll dump U.S. treasuries, not the 200 billion they've sold quietly over 2 years, the remaining 800 billion, all at once, in a coordinated sale across multiple markets simultaneously. The bond market crashes. Interest rates spike instantly. The U.S. government suddenly can't finance its debt at sustainable rates. The Fed has to choose. Let rates spike and cause an immediate depression, or print money to buy the bonds and cause hyperinflation. Either choice destroys the system. There's no good option. That's the point. That's the weapon. Second, they'll trigger a supply chain crisis, deliberately, strategically, ruthlessly. China controls 60 to 90% of critical manufacturing. Semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, rare earth elements, solar panels, batteries, electronics. They don't cut off exports completely. That would unite the world against them. Instead, they restrict them strategically, selectively. Export licenses required, processing delays, quality inspections, environmental reviews, all creating shortages, panic, price spikes. They show the West exactly how dependent they are, exactly how vulnerable, exactly how trapped. Third, and this is the brilliant part, they'll offer an alternative. A new system, a replacement, a lifeline, yuan-based trade settlement, no dollars required, CIPS instead of SWIFT, digital yuan for international transactions, gold backing for credibility. Better terms for countries that switch, and dozens of countries will take it, not because they want to, because they'll have to, because the dollar system will be in crisis, because China will offer them survival. This is stage 4, the controlled demolition, the collapse of Western financial dominance, the end of dollar hegemony, not through military force, not through war, through economic warfare. Through weaponizing dependencies they spent 30 years building. The pattern predicts it, history confirms it. The preparation is visible, the timeline is set, controlled demolition approaching, undeniable, inevitable. Now, here's what everyone gets wrong. The comfortable lies people tell themselves, the delusions that will cost them everything. Lie 1. This time is different. China needs America as much as America needs China. Mutual dependence prevents conflict. Economic ties create peace. Wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Germany needed British trade in 1914. They had massive commercial relationships. Their economies were intertwined. They went to war anyway. Japan needed American consumers in 1987. America was their largest market, their primary source of wealth. They attacked anyway. Russia needed European energy revenue in 2022. It was 40% of their export income. They weaponized it anyway. Economic interdependence doesn't prevent conflict. It creates the conditions for economic warfare. It gives the rising power leverage to use as a weapon. China's been building alternatives for 15 years. The Belt and Road Initiative gives them markets in Asia, Africa, Latin America. They don't need the American consumer anymore. They're ready for separation, prepared for it, positioned for it. America isn't. Lie 2. The dollar is too big to fail. It's the reserve currency. Everyone needs it. It can't be replaced. Wrong again. The pound sterling was the reserve currency for 150 years. Dominant, unchallengeable, permanent. Until it wasn't. Reserve currency status isn't permanent. It's conditional. It requires trust, stability, fiscal discipline, sound money. And those conditions are eroding rapidly. U.S. debt at 124% of GDP, 34 trillion and growing by 2 trillion annually. Interest payments over 1 trillion per year. They're printing trillions, debasing the currency, weaponizing it through sanctions. Every time America freezes someone's assets or cuts them from SWIFT, they show the world why they need an alternative. China is building that alternative right now in plain sight. The digital yuan processed over 250 billion in transactions. In 2023, growing exponentially. That's not a test. That's not experimental. That's a functioning competitor. Over 40 countries are now testing or implementing digital yuan systems for trade, bilateral agreements, currency swaps, direct settlement. The dollar's dominance is ending, not in theory, in practice, right now. Lie 3. America can respond. We have the military, the technology, the innovation, the economic power. We'll adapt and maintain dominance. This is the most dangerous lie, the most fatal delusion. The response time is too slow. The dependency is too deep. The leverage is too great. Look at Europe and Russia. When Russia cut gas flows, what happened? Could Europe respond effectively? No. They couldn't replace the energy fast enough, couldn't rebuild infrastructure in months, couldn't find alternatives immediately. They just suffered for years. America has the same problem. Worse, actually. China controls the supply chains, controls the manufacturing, controls critical resources, controls the dependencies America built over 30 years. If China triggers stage 4 tomorrow, can America replace Chinese manufacturing quickly? No, not in months, not in years, maybe not in a decade. Semiconductors take years to fab. Pharmaceutical supply chains take years to rebuild. Rare earth processing takes years to establish. You can't just move it overnight. The military doesn't help. You can't bomb your way out of a supply chain crisis. Technology doesn't help when the semiconductors are made in Taiwan. And China controls Taiwan's options through economic pressure. Economic power doesn't help when your economy is built on debt and your creditor is your adversary. The response options are limited. The damage is unavoidable. The pattern is unstoppable. Here's the reality nobody wants to face. The truth that's too uncomfortable to acknowledge. Stage 4 is coming. Not might come, will come. The pattern is absolute. The sequence is inevitable. The preparations are complete. China is positioned. America is vulnerable. The timeline is set. 2026. Remember it. That's when everything changes. Every day that passes, China accumulates more leverage, builds more alternatives, strengthens more relationships, prepares more thoroughly. Every day, America adds more debt, deepens more dependencies, loses more manufacturing, becomes more vulnerable, until the moment China decides the leverage is sufficient. The alternatives are ready, the timing is optimal. Then they'll trigger stage 4 and Western markets will collapse. Not might collapse, will collapse. Not opinion, not speculation. Pattern recognition based on 3 historical examples with identical outcomes. The 8 trillion move is done. The positioning is final. The trap is set. What happens next will reshape the global economy. Destroy Western financial dominance. Transfer wealth and power from America to China. End the dollar era. Begin something new, not through war, through economics, through the same pattern that's worked 3 times before, through inevitability. The only question is whether you'll see it coming, whether you'll position for it, whether you'll survive it, whether you'll profit from it, or whether you'll be another victim. Another statistic, another person who ignored the pattern until it was too late. History is screaming the answer. The data is showing the answer. The pattern is revealing the answer. China's $8 trillion move will collapse Western markets. Not might, not maybe, will. The sequence is set. The stages are clear. The trigger is ready. The countdown has begun. What you do in the next 12 months determines the next decade of your financial life. The collapse is inevitable. Your response is optional. Choose wisely, position correctly, act decisively. Time is running out faster than you think.